So, one of the most legendary success stories in the world of environment and food production system is a fish farm down in Spain called Poma. I first heard about the story in a TED talk, and it was just amazing. It goes beyond any form of agriculture systems, even the so-called sustainable integrated ones. And it just perfectly demonstrates this concept of sustainability and harmony between humankind and nature. So at first, it all seems to me that everything, this perfect sustainability, actually comes from doing nothing. To me, it's like the idea of preservation, where you just stop. Just stop any human activities before they even impact the environment. And that's exactly how they run the fish farms in Spain. Instead of being like other commercial fish farms where they use all these antibiotics to maximize the yields and maximize the income, at Poma, there are lots of different species of fish naturally interacting in one area. And there are even flamingos who are feeding on the fishes. It just doesn't look like a fish farm at all. Instead, it's more of something like a well-established ecosystem with all these complex food webs. So, this story of Poma just kind of implanted in my heart this simple idea of sustainability, in which, for a while, being sustainable to me just means to minimize human interference with the nature. But of course, later with my own experiences, I found that all of these environmental issues and sustainability discussions, they're just far more complex and sophisticated than they seem. So last year, me and my classmates and some teachers, we started this little garden on a wasteland at the back of our campus. And in the very beginning, it was just perfectly sustainable, as we are turning wasteland into farmland. Well, of course, only small-scale farmland. We only got plots of land like this, but this process didn't involve any forms of deforestation. So it's perfectly sustainable. And of course, we wanted it to be as sustainable as possible, so we didn't use any fertilizers, pesticides, or herbicides. Like, we're doing it completely organically. However, as we further kind of work into our garden, it just further contradicts and drives apart from my idea of sustainability, which I learned from the story of Viva Poma. Like, I was asking myself questions. Shouldn't we just leave the garden alone without interrupting the nature? Shouldn't we just spread the seeds and we harvest? Why we still gotta do all these extra works like watering, tilling, adding fertile soil, setting up rat pits, cleaning out weeds, and etc., etc. I was really confused, and I started to kind of analyze these different aspects of this problem in my head. I even started to question the terrestrial food production system. Like, I remember, particularly, I asked a very kind of silly question. Is there something about planting crops on land that limits its sustainability? So, of course, I get a negative answer in every aspect that I saw. And that's when I started to realize that, well, there might be a bit more complexity added to the discussion of sustainability, and that the lesson of Vita La Palma might actually have a deeper and hidden meaning behind it. So, I started to do a bit further research on Vita La Palma, outside of the TED Talk I heard of, which only talks about the present day of it. And as I delved deeper into its history, I found this. This is a picture of Vita La Palma before it was turned into a fish farm. You can see just arid plains with almost no sign of life at all, which actually resembles a dried marshland. It was in 1982 that a local company called Pescaria Islama bought this land and using drainage channels and rivers and all these different kind of technologies to refill this 80,000 acres of dried marshland with water. Huge amount of money, huge amount of investments was involved in this process. And it's just very expensive and time consuming. It took a very long time for the ecosystem to fully re-establish. It took years for the fishes to come back, for the plants to regrow, and for the flamingos and other wild animals to come back to the Vita La Palma marshland ecosystem. And all of these things, it's sustainable. So of course, once it's established, everything just replenish themselves. However, the starting cost at the same time is very, very high. So at that moment, that's when I really started to understand the complexity of implementing sustainable food production on a global scale. Like, in the first place, preservation is just not enough. It's actually far from enough. Considering all the harms that humans already did to our planet Earth, like greenhouse gas emissions, air pollutions, and overexploitation, and etc., we cannot just preserve the environment only. In addition to minimizing further human impacts, we gotta do restoration. Like, we have to reclaim and restore affected ecosystems, just like the Vita La Palma. And beyond that, I figured replicating success story is just not going to happen, as all of these geopolitical, socio-cultural, economical factors, all of these different kind of factors are different from place to place and from case study to case study. Let's say you're in a poor region and you want to replicate this perfect, wonderful, sustainable success story of Vita La Palma. And in the very beginning, you don't have the money to use all these technologies to refill the dry marshland with water. And you eventually just find yourself wasting money, wasting water without changing anything at all. So sustainable food production is going to look differently in different places around the world. And we must figure out varied ways to try to achieve this. I know, it may sound a bit negative and bad that, we can't just easily replicate the already sustainable success stories. However, I'd say there's actually a better and more optimistic way to rephrase it. And that is, sustainable food production still got infinite possibilities for us to experiment and explore in the future. Thank you.